My name is Tigh Compton. I am a graduate of Pikeville College, now University of Pikeville. This will be my 13th year on campus, 12th year as an employee of some sort, whether that be volunteer, part-time, whatever. I started coaching when I was an undergraduate student, so been here a while.
And now this is your first full year as a head coach.
First full-time year as a head coach, yes.
Wow. So maybe I'm wrong about this, but as a kid, did you think you were going to be a head coach of a college basketball team?
Never. That's coming from a small town in Southwest Virginia. That's like I don't know anybody that has done this. There wasn't a path necessarily of a family friend or somebody from my community that did it and kind of got me interested in it. It was just my mother and my father had coached on in youth sport levels, AAU for my dad, and then my mom had coached a little bit in high school at the high school level. So nothing full time though. That wasn't their passion. That wasn't what they did, and they were far from being coaches as a profession. It was just that was something they did, and athletics was always something that my dad and I bonded over, and just was something that my whole childhood was kind of geared toward. Not necessarily chasing the dream of being a great player necessarily, but just always kind of had something to do with an athletic event. Whether it was Dad and I going to a football game or just watching the local high school team play or my own games, whatever it was, just something to do with athletics was a huge part of my childhood. So it's always been the biggest passion that I've had, just being in athletics. But really looking at the straight line to say, I wanted to coach. I wanted to be a head basketball coach, and certainly a head basketball coach at a program that's as successful as this one has been. That was never on the radar.
So when you were a kid, what did you want to be?
My dad owned his own business, owned mine supply business. I'm the first, first generation male in my family to not make their living somehow in the coal related industry, whether it be as a miner or a supply salesman. Somehow, some way, my family has always kind of been supported by natural resources somehow, some way. So, just knowing my dad was an entrepreneur, opened his own business, did that. My mom was a teacher. She was a physical education teacher. I never really had the desire to be in education. Business I thought was what I wanted to do. I thought I didn't really know exactly what with business, but I just knew I liked the freedoms that my dad had owning his own business, and he was able to go and do as he pleased and was at all my events and was able to just have a quality of life that I recognized early on that was different than shift work. And that was a freedom that I wanted. So I thought that I wanted to do something with business. I just had really no idea or guidance in terms of what I wanted to do with business.
So, as kids we dream big, we dream all kinds of wild things, but as adults we also have dreams, and we think about dream jobs. Is there a dream job out there for you? Are you working it?
Yeah, in terms of, you talk about dream jobs, and it's easy to just point to the top 1 or 2% of whatever the most glamorous job in your field is. And you try to be more realistic, and as you get older, you think of more realistic dream jobs. What is it that is something that could be potentially attainable for me? And really, this is a dream job for me. This is my alma mater. This is close to my family, close to where I grew up. This is the alma mater of my wife. We're close to her family. This checks as many of the boxes as you could really check when you're trying to come up with what would make me the happiest in my adult life in terms of who do I need to be around. Is it a situation where I can be successful, that I can be financially stable? Is it just all the boxes? This checks it. Now, could I stand to get a little closer to warmer weather and maybe a beach and try to do some of the same things? I could probably try to do that, but I think as long as I'm around family, as long as I'm in a situation where I can feel comfortable professionally, I can be financially stable and help support my family, and my family is happy with where I'm at as well. It's when you get married, it's much less about you and much more about us. And I have to think about my wife's career, my wife's desires and her wants, and those kinds of things in any kind of professional decision that I make. So I think we're both very, very happy here. I think this checks the majority of those boxes, but there's always a desire to kind of move up, so to speak, or chase different challenges within your profession. And I don't necessarily have any of those desires at this point in time, but we'll see. We're just getting this one started, so we'll see. We'll see as things go, how things work out. But I'm extremely happy here. Couldn't be more blessed to be in the situation I'm in.
So as long as like University of Miami or
For sure.
San Diego State doesn't call,
San Diego State needs a coach, and they call, then maybe we'll have to look at it. But we'll stay here until then.
Did anything in life happen to spur you on to the coaching route?
Really, I just kind of hit that point where a lot of people get to. I went to college and went into business, and that was fine. That was a plan. That was the first step toward figuring things out, I felt like. And the further I got along into it, the farther I just decided that it really wasn't, it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. And really just it didn't come with a plan, and I wasn't, figuring it out at the rate that was going to make me comfortable. So I bailed on that, and I ended up going into communication my last year and finishing the communication program, getting a degree in that. And the program of communication was just something I enjoyed much more than the business aspect. I thought, the business side of things was looking past the education piece to get to the professional side of it. Already being out of school, I thought I could enjoy business. Now, actually going through the coursework, the classes, communication was a much better situation for me. Luckily, at that point in time, I had decided that I wanted to do something again to stay around athletics. I had made that decision before I came here. I went to a junior college, went to play football at a four-year institution, then went back home to a junior college, graduated, and then came here. So along the way, I decided that I wanted to do something in athletics. It wasn't until I got here I was able to meet with Coach Wells, kind of figure out a little more about what college coaching entailed. That I decided, let's give it a shot. We'll give it a try. And this is, basketball was my first passion. It's what I love more than anything. My family, like I said, had coached it. So I wanted to give it a shot and give it a try and see what I could make of it. And the more I did it, the more I was involved, the more responsibility I was given, the more I loved it. So I guess maybe I am one of the rare ones that, I kind of, by the time I was finishing college, I knew that I was going to try to be a college coach. I knew that was the path. Again, you don't know how, you don't know where necessarily, you don't know exactly what the path looks like, but I knew I was going to leave and try to be a college basketball coach. In my, when we're making our portfolios and our resumes and doing all those kinds of things in our capstone classes, Chandra Master, I'll never. She allowed me to totally gear everything I had resume-wise, everything to the examples that I could bring to her that coaches used. And they in this profession, it doesn't really matter if I had worked, for the county back home in the summers doing maintenance work or what. That just wasn't relevant in this profession. So everything I did, I geared towards trying to highlight the skills that I had been able to do here as a part-time assistant and undergraduate student assistant in school. So I guess I did have a little bit of an idea. Did I think that it was going to turn into a situation here where I've been here now for 12 years? That was the furthest thing from my mind. Just because the opportunity, just we didn't have the positions or the turnover necessarily that you would expect for me to be able to kind of work my way up, because there's so many qualified people that are dying to be in a position like this. So I never thought it would work out the way it's worked out. I've just been extremely lucky to be able to be at the right place at the right time and earn the trust of those that are making decisions and fall into a good situation as we go. But I did know that I wanted to coach by the time I was finished with college. Had no idea where or how that was going to happen or take place. I was obviously going to have to lean on Coach Wells significantly one way or the other to try to open a door for me somehow, some way, just to try to get in and earn that opportunity. And luckily it ended up being here.
So I want to make sure I'm hearing you correctly. Went to college to play football. Now you coach college basketball. Interesting.
Yeah, football was always football and basketball were the two things that growing up that I really loved to do. Played several different sports, but those two were the main two that I focused on. And Basketball is my biggest passion. Obviously, loved to play basketball. Athletically, I was much more capable of continuing as a football player. It's just it's hard. It's hard when that's not really your passion. The work that is required and just the commitment that's required. It can easily become overwhelming if that's not just something that you absolutely love to do day in and day out. And it didn't take me long to figure out that was not the route that I needed to go, and I needed to come back and punt, so to speak, and figure out what was going to go on and what my next route was going to be. And in the meantime, from coming, I went one semester, came back to the junior college after that one semester, and that's when my basketball coaching career actually started. I was able to go back to my high school and be the head middle school coach and the assistant JV coach at where I graduated just a semester before. And kind of get my feet wet there and doing that. And that kind of got the itch going and then got the mind thinking, this is, maybe basketball coaching is what I want to do. If playing's not going to be an option, how do I do this coaching thing? And, doing it at a small school, on a middle school and junior varsity scale is obviously much different than what I do now, but it was enough to kind of scratch the itch, so to speak. And that's kind of where the ball started rolling. Well, okay, if I can do it at this level, then what's the next level? Like, how do I get to the next one? And then, I'm going to have to go on and get my 4-year degree. So, like, how do I somehow find my way into a college program? And what are the steps that I need to take there? And it just kind of steamrolled from there.
Wow. So when you think about your life now, I mean, obviously coaches are so often measured by wins and losses, right? But in the college world, there's just so much more recruiting and trying to get people graduated and life skills and all this kind of stuff. So when you think about your call or mission, and you were to try to put that in a sentence or two, what do you think your call is?
Yeah, it's really, really hard to not be defined by wins and losses. And this is something that, especially during the times now that we have, it's so abnormal and so uncertain and just day to day. This is something that a lot of my peers and I talk about. It's just, it's really easy to become overconsumed with all the things that go into trying to bring a successful product to the table during these times that, it's hard to not make basketball who you are and not what you do. And I think you can become so consumed with wins and losses that it does become who you are. And it's really important to not let that happen, in my opinion. Not let your value be rested on wins and losses and necessarily the job that you're doing. I want this to be what I do, not who I am, so to speak. So, just the call. I also think that you're going to lose enough games in your career that if you make it all about wins and losses and that's what you try to make it about, your calling about, you're going to be let down and set up for failure far too many times. And you have to try to find a way to make it about so much more than that. The development of your players in terms of just as people, and sure, you can take plenty of pride. We want to win every game. That's always the goal. We want to make our players as good as they can be on the floor. That's our goal. That's what they want. That's part of why they come here. But we have what we call the Paul program, where we've been able to set up different speakers to talk to the guys, where we've kind of went over some social injustice type things, where we went over just different life lessons. We're going to talk about how to tie a necktie and just different things, just trying to keep it as fresh as we can. And those opportunities, honestly, are a lot of times more thought goes into those opportunities than it goes into our daily practice for me, just because I want those opportunities to be the things that they remember most and the things that they can get the most out of and carry with them for far longer than they're going to be here as players. So I think just in a sentence, maybe as a call, I think it's my job to just try to enhance our players' abilities across the board, whether that be basketball, academics, life. It's just my job to try to get the absolute most out of all of those areas and untap any kind of potential that maybe hasn't been tapped before. I want to try to reach every one of those guys in multiple different ways and just try to pull as much out of them and get them out of their comfort zone and get them to explore different things and just try to find themselves a little bit as players and as people and students, and just get the ball rolling for the next step, I guess, so to speak, that when they leave here, they're more comfortable than ever in trying to find whatever that is that they want to pursue in the next chapter of what they're doing.
Mm. You have already and will continue to be a very influential person, especially in a small town.
For sure.
Basketball coach. I mean, like, there's lots of people
For sure.
looking at you. But who's been most influential to you?
That's an absolute no-brainer. It's Coach Wells by far to me. Had really no reason to take me in and give me opportunity when he gave it to me, and has been a mentor. He was in my wedding. Has been the ultimate, father figure, mentor, boss. The absolute ultimate in all those areas that you could possibly ask for. So, and it came at such an influential time. I started when I was 21 years old. So, from the time I'm 21 to 33, there's so many different things that have changed in my life. Going from, second year, third year of college to, starting a family, getting married, buying a home, moving into full-time roles and different things. There's just so many changes that have happened during that time. And, he's been the constant. He's the guy that I've seen every single day for 12 years. I come in and he's here every single day. I work with him every single day still, see him every single day. So, it would be hard for me to say anybody other than him, just for the simple fact that, he's been the one constant that I've woke up, came to work, seen every single day for the last 12 years. So, he's had the opportunity to impact me, and I'm thankful that he took the opportunity to invest in me and didn't just make it, a casual relationship where it just ended when we punched the clock at the end of the day, and it was all about business. Like that wasn't what he was interested in, and that's hopefully the kind of culture that we are able to establish again now with me as the head coach here with my staff. But I couldn't thank him more. He's certainly been the most influential guy to me, for sure.
Wow. There are so many guys or people who want to do what you're doing. Right, because when the word came out that Coach Wells was going to step down, people started polishing their resumes. Right, a lot of people want to be doing what you're doing, but for a lot of young people, when they're thinking about being a head coach at this level, what do you got to do to get there?
It's hard. It's hard. There's just there's not a direct path. There's not a manual that shows you the steps you got to take. There's not a exact science to selection. There's just not. And really, in our business, and networking is so important, just because you never know when someone that you had an opportunity to meet or impact is going to be in the chair making a decision. And there's so much demand for so few positions in this profession across the board, that you can never burn a bridge. Like, you can never ever think about burning a bridge, and you just never know when that person, you're going to get a call from someone that you spent 2 days talking to at a coaching clinic 2 years ago, but you were able to make such a influential impact on those people that now they're in a position to hire a head coach, and you stood out to them, and all of a sudden you're in the mix for something that you never thought that you may be in the mix for. So just establishing as many meaningful relationships. The way I've always heard it is earning the ask. So many people are quick to reach out for help to someone that maybe they've never met, or maybe a friend knows, and maybe they feel like they know that person more than they really do, or they've just not done anything to earn the ask, so to speak, and they've just reached out and expect somebody to just throw them a lifeline when there's no real reason to, other than just maybe the other person just tries to help everybody, and it's hard to satisfy everybody. It's hard to help everybody. So, there's a lot of building relationships and kind of sweat equity in building some of those relationships that, you've got to earn the ask, and you've got to develop the relationship, get to know people, and before you go asking for something, before you go asking for help, before you are in a position to need that person to come through for you somehow, some way. Like, you need to make sure that relationship has been built properly, and that you've done all that you can do to earn that ask. And you're not just, coming with your hands out every single time when you reach out to a person. Maybe you've only talked to this person 3 times in your life, and all 3 times is when you've needed something, you've reached out to them to get something from them. And, it's if you're developing those kinds of relationships, it's going to be really hard to climb in this business, just because that's not the kind of people that most people want to hire and attach their name to and be responsible for. So there's no direct line, there's no exact science. You just have to build as many possible relationships as there is, and just try to be the best in your current job that you can possibly be. A lot of people, I think, get caught up in which was hard for me too, as being an associate head coach and an assistant and being so involved for so long. It's really easy to get caught up in trying to do someone else's job and thinking about how could I do this position better, what would I do differently, and losing sight of just being the best that I can possibly be in the role that I'm asked to serve and on the staff. So I think remembering that is also extremely important. You just got to be the best that you can possibly be at whatever position it is that you currently have, and things will work out for you. If you can do that, you can own that. People are going to see that and expect you to be able to take that same kind of focus, same kind of work ethic, and apply it to your new position if you're hired, and figure it out. I mean, everyone knows that there's just certain things that you just can't learn until you're thrown in the fire. So I think just being the best, developing relationships, meaningful relationships, and just doing the absolute best you can do at the job that you've got is the best advice that I could probably give.
Well, that I never knew until I started talking to some of our assistant coaches how much networking is so critical in this business. So last question, when you're dealing and coaching with players, sometimes they come in and they've got these great dreams. They're going to go to the league or whatever their dream is, and then things become a reality of actually they have no idea what they're going to do with their lives. When you have a player like that or a student like that, what do you tell them?
Yeah, I can always remember when Governor Patton was the president, he would always tell us that we weren't building pro teams. We weren't trying to field professional teams here. We were trying to graduate students. And he's right, 100%. We're not trying to build a farm team. But the reality is that a lot of the players that come to us here come to us because they feel like we give them the best opportunity to at least have an open door to attempt some sort of professional career, and we embrace that. We want that. That's something we're very prideful of, very proud of, and something that we won't ever apologize for, trying to give those guys those options and those availabilities. But the ball's always going to stop bouncing. It stops bouncing for even the best of the best, and relatively early. It's very rare for someone who's not in the NBA to be able to make a long career, retire, and not have to do something else with basketball or outside of basketball. Even some of the best overseas job opportunities, are enough to make a great living and earn a great life for the duration that you're doing it. It's just still not enough to live off of for the next 30, 40 years of your life. So, we graduation is a huge key to that. We have had a good rate of, I guess, for lack of a better way, when we're asked what our graduation rate is, or how many of our guys we've been able to graduate, our typical answer is every single one that wanted to. And, I think that's true too. There's been very few guys that were committed enough and really interested enough in obtaining their degree that didn't find a way to do that at the end of the day, regardless of whether it took them an extra semester, or maybe they had to load up or just buckle down or change habits, whatever it was. The ones that want to find a way to get that done, and we're able to assist them in that. There's just not a lot that you can do for people that don't want to do that. When you start having to drag them to the finish line and you want it more than them, just in academics and higher education, it's just not going to work for them. So we have that talk up front. Every recruit we ever talk to is just about, this is going to be much more than just basketball here for you. We have expectations that you're going to have to meet in all these other areas of community service, of academics, of just being a good person, just doing things the way we ask you to do them in the right manner. And we're very upfront and open about that. And if it's something that they feel uncomfortable with or not something they look for, then by all means, just let's figure that out now on the front end before it's too late. And I think for the most part over the course of time, we've done a good job of evaluating those people that have wanted to do the right thing for the most part. Obviously it's hard to get to know someone in a day or two visit here and there, and you have some issues that may arise, but for the most part we've done well. I think just for me personally, even more so maybe than actually getting them graduated, is changing some of the habits and just maybe raising the level of expectation for them, and maybe raising the understanding of what it is that they can actually achieve and how they go about the process to which they go about trying to reach goals and trying to achieve certain things. We've had a lot of really, really good people come through our program that may not have finished with a degree, but from where they came into our program, the kind of habits and the kind of work ethic and those kinds of things that they came in with, to the point to which they left our program, they've done a total 180. And now they're in a position to, at least, even without a degree, they at least understand what it takes to become accomplished, to reach certain goals, to fight through adversity, to be able to work towards something and not just give up. And we've had a lot of those guys that maybe haven't reached the end goal of obtaining a degree, but have at least come around to the point where, like, I feel good about them going into the world, into the workplace, and being able to manage and make a living and support a family and do the right thing because of the habits that they've created in their time being here. So it's, in higher, and this may not be a good answer for this avenue, but even in higher education, I do think there are lessons to be learned in the process to which we're trying to get people to certain things that maybe don't culminate at the end with the perfect ending with a degree or whatever that looks like. But if you can look from the time they come in to the time they leave and look at the positive impact and the positive change that you've created, college isn't for everybody. And some of these guys have figured that out along the way, that, like, I was able to continue playing basketball because of school, but, like, this just isn't for school, just isn't for me. So, like, once I'm done with my eligibility, if I'm not finished yet academically, this just isn't for me without the basketball piece. But they've learned so much in the process that they're able to go out and hold a steady job and move up in companies and start a family and do these things successfully. So I think those still count as huge wins for me. Obviously, we'd love for everybody to leave with a degree and fulfill their academic, capabilities to 100%, but it's just, that's not realistic a lot of times. And I think it's just, we can't lose sight of where people end up from where they finished. And I think if we've done a great job of molding those people, changing the direction maybe that they were on initially, and giving them the tools to be successful moving forward, that's what the degree was going to do. That's what we hope that the degree did, the education did, was set them up for a position to be able to be successful moving forward. And we can't lose sight of all those other things from A to Z, and the growth of people and the growth of student athletes and that kind of thing. And we've had a ton of those kinds of success stories too. So just, that's my advice, is just, don't get too far down because you're trying to, don't get too far down on yourself because you're trying to fulfill a dream or check boxes that don't fit you. It's okay if it just, at this point of your life, it doesn't fit you. Don't let the progress that you've made be for nothing. Like, let's figure out how to make that progress, turn that into a positive for you moving forward, and figure out what it is that you like. Figure out what it is, it can just support you financially. If basketball is what you want to try to do, okay, well, let's look at how long we can realistically project you to be able to do this basketball thing, and in that amount of time, like, what are you going to do during that time to set yourself up for the next chapter of what it is when it ends? Are you going to be able to save enough money? Are you going to be able to create relationships with sponsors, with whoever, to try to set yourself up for an opportunity once the ball stops bouncing? So just finding an interest, finding what level of growth that person has had, what tools they've picked up along the way, where they're at in their maturity process. And sometimes sometimes guys just still aren't ready. They've not wanted their basketball career to end, and they're just not ready. They haven't thought about it. They're just not ready. And those, you have to be a little tougher on those, I think, just because it's they've got to make a decision. A lot of people just struggle making decisions, and we just really sit down and we hammer home, well, this is what your degree's in. Is this what you really love to do? And sometimes it's not. So, okay, well, what is it that you love to do? Like, what is it that you think that you could be okay doing? Have you had any kind of on-job experience during college? Have you done any internships? Have you done any of these kinds of things? Like, what avenues are there that you can follow that maybe you can follow an interest? And then we start looking at, okay, well, this is what you're interested in. Can you make a living doing this? Like, is this something that's feasible for you to be able to, this is what you're going to make doing it. Are you okay living in this range? Like, this is you're going to make money, but you're going to have to, you're not going to have what you want maybe by doing this. And just opening their eyes maybe to some things that maybe they just don't understand about. Like I said, I went into business because just the concept of business interested me. Once I got into it, I realized that really wasn't what I was interested in. And maybe some of those guys have gotten too far down the line in a certain major to be able to back out and do something else, and they're having to figure out what that next step is and that next avenue is to try to find their interest. So it's a tough question, it's a tough conversation, it's a tough series of conversations, but just getting them to be open-minded and communicate and think maturely and think in a manner of not in the now necessarily, but thinking into the future and thinking about, this is, okay, these decisions that I make now are going to be impactful for me for the next 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Like, what happens if this is the worst case scenario that can happen from me taking this job? If that worst case scenario happens and I'm still living it for 5 years from now, am I going to be okay with that? If best case scenario happens, we know we're okay, but if worst case scenario plays out, is this still something that I'm going to be okay with making this kind of decision doing if it lasts for the next 5, 6, 7 years? And if it's not, maybe we need to look at something else, like just preparing, I guess, maybe for the worst and seeing how we feel about the worst and working our way up to better. If we can be okay with the worst, then we know we'll be okay with the better. So that's a roundabout answer, I guess, of just saying everybody's different. Everybody's different. The conversation goes differently with each of them. But there are tough conversations that have to be had, and you have to poke and prod a little bit, maybe more than you're used to with them, and some need it more than others. But just getting the mind moving a little bit, thinking about things that maybe people haven't thought about before is enough a lot of times for a curious mind to take off and run with it. And just trying to be thought-provoking and getting them to think ahead is the first step for us. And it usually works out the rest of the way. They figure it out on their own after that.
Well, you mentioned tough conversations, and right now you're living the dream of a lot of people, young, head coach of a very successful program. But the tough conversation is you've worked really, really hard to get here. And we admire that work ethic, level of integrity you're putting in, and just believe great things for the program because you're here. So thank you so much for saying yes, and saying yes a long time ago to all that hard work. So
absolutely, I appreciate it for sure. There's, like I said, you have to be able to project, you have to be able to look, and if you can be okay with that, that was always the way I looked at it. This is the result of, if I take this position or I stay here and do this and I make this, like, this is going to be the bare minimum that I'm able to do. Am I okay with that? And if I'm okay with that, then let's do it. Let's rock and roll. And if I can make it better in the process, then that's gravy on it. That's icing on the cake. That's perfect. But no, there's nowhere else I'd rather be. I've been surrounded by unbelievable people here. Couldn't ask for a better place to grow up and kind of find myself and find my way, and couldn't have worked out better for me.